explain why this inequality has a solution, which is the set of all real numbers. We have here an absolute value of some stuff greater than some number. Now you know that we can go ahead and rewrite absolute value greater than some number inequalities into two inequalities, neither of which have an absolute value. So that's one approach that we could try to do. But instead of doing that, there's a much easier approach. And the easier approach comes from using a little bit of logic and noticing a couple of things. The two things that we want to notice are that this piece here is a positive thing and that that piece there is a negative thing. All right? On the left, something positive. On the right, something negative. How do I know this thing on the left is positive? Because it's in absolute value signs, and that's what those absolute value signs mean. How do I know this thing on the right is negative? Well, it's a negative number, so it's negative. So if I have a positive thing on one side of an inequality and a negative thing on the other side of the inequality, well, depending on the direction of the inequality, it's either always true or never true. In this case, since we have this positive thing greater than or equal to this negative thing, it's going to be always true, right? No matter what, excuse me, no matter what x value I put in here, I multiply by 3, I divide by 50, I add 1 over 45, I get something. I don't care what it is. I get some number, and I take its absolute value. That means I have a positive number. And I say, hey, is this positive number bigger than some negative number? Yes, it is. So the reason why this inequality, why the solution is the set of all real numbers, is because this 3x over 50 plus 1 over 45 is greater than or equal to 0 for any x, right? So in particular, if it's greater than 0, it's also going to be greater than this negative number. Now, if instead of having this direction inequality, if we had been asking about the other direction inequality, if we had had something, I'm writing the same thing in the absolute values, but it could be anything. If we have some absolute value, if instead of greater than, if we had less than some negative number, well, here I say, oh, here's a positive thing, here's a negative thing. When do I have a positive thing less than or equal to a negative thing? Well, never. Positive things are bigger than negative things. So in this sort of case, there's no solution. Or you can use the empty set to denote that there's no solution, right? No matter what x value I plug in here, I do some operations, add, subtract, multiply, divide, whatever. I get a number, I take an absolute value, so now I have a positive number, whatever it is. And I say, is that positive number smaller than some negative number? No, never. So no matter what x value I plug in here now, we'd have no solution. So empty set would be our answer. On the question as stated, right? No matter what x value we plug in, we have a positive thing greater than a negative number. When's that true? Always, right? So when you're doing an absolute value problem and you notice that one side is always positive and the other side is always negative, we don't have to do a lot of algebraic work. We just decide if the positive thing and the negative thing, if the inequality is the correct direction, telling us that positives are bigger than negatives, in which case our solution is going to be everything, or at least everything that's in the domain. I guess we could have a domain issue here. We don't. Never trying to divide by 0. Or in this other case, is the inequality saying the positive is smaller than the negative? If so, that never is going to be true, and so we'd have no solution, right? So we don't have to do a lot of work if we notice something's positive versus something negative. How can we make sure something's positive? Well, absolute values would make something positive, right? Another way that we could make something positive, if I took some stuff and if we went ahead and squared it, that would be positive. If we took some stuff that was a little bit negative and added a large positive number to it, that would make it positive, right? So there's a couple different ways that something could be always positive or always negative, but keep that in mind.